about the IT system and the. Great, are we live? Good morning, everybody. It is, oh my gosh, it's the 2nd of May. It's Jeanette White's 80th birthday. Very exciting.
Really?
And we are here in Senate Economic Development, and we are going to be addressing and hopefully voting out H217, our act relating to workers' compensation and unemployment insurance. And we're going to begin with Cameron Wood from the Department of Labor, who is going to update us on a couple issues that we talked about on Thursday, I believe. And then we are going to move to Damian Leonard to walk through the latest draft, which is on our website, I believe. And it's draft 3.1 for people who are following along. So Cam, it's yours.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, and Cameron Wood, for the record, Policy and Legislative Affairs Director for the Department of Labor. I sent an email to the committee members as well as to the advocates and parties involved yesterday afternoon, just to update the committee on some things coming out of our conversation from last week. The department took the language that Damian had drafted Thursday or Friday.
One of those
to fix the concern that was raised in the committee last week about ensuring that when we're altering the calculation of temporary partial, we're actually affecting what we're trying to do, which is ensuring that people that are going back to work part-time are not then given less benefits and incentivized to remain on total disability or temp total disability. So we took the language that was drafted, which I think the department is generally comfortable with, but we would prefer in these situations to get some analysis done by NCCI. So we sent that information over to them. As soon as we got it from Damian, we did not anticipate hearing anything back by this morning. And so I just wanted the committee to know that we have sent that along, and we did not anticipate having anything today, and we do not.
And you don't.
Okay. So obviously, if this bill were to move forward, as soon as we receive that information, we would share it with you all. So you have it, as well as your counterparts in the House. So that was one thing.
Just a question on that. So if there were legislative fixes that were needed, we would do it next year.
Yes.
Well, I'm assuming that the analysis comes back the way we anticipated,
okay,
and there needed to be any additional tweaks. I would agree with Senator Clarkson here that we could make tweaks next year if we needed to. Okay. I don't anticipate it, but if the analysis came back and was something seriously drastic, that could change the department's position on that language between now and when it goes to the House. But I don't anticipate.
Got it.
So
when we don't get it right, the opportunity is in 8 months we can address it again. Which
we've had to do that many times.
We've had to do it several times. And on the second issue. On the
second issue, so we went back based on the discussion amongst the committee, and I'm speaking a little bit for Dirk here, but he worked with his team, and we looked at what the functionality is going to be in our new workers' comp system that will be going live later this year. And we will have the ability to collect additional information, including dates that payments are made. So I got to put in my email at this point with late in the session. I don't want to necessarily add anything to the bill around this piece. We've had conversations with the advocates, and I think it's probably worth it for us to maybe talk during the off session and kind of discuss if there's some ways that we can gather information around this topic, penalties, late payments, etc., and then we can come back next year if there's something that we feel that you as the legislative body need to direct us to do.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I think you said that you will work to capture that data.
We have the ability to capture
the data. That you have the capacity.
And then it just becomes a more detailed conversation with with insurance carriers, et cetera, to figure out what that potentially looks like. Again, we mentioned last week in committee, just based on the morning's testimony, we don't know what the administrative lift is going to be to get that information. So we'll just need to work with them and figure out what that could look like. So
informally, to follow up on Wendy's thought, I think, is that once that's up and running, just given this concern, if it's an ongoing, that we might just take a month and track, if we can collect that data, just track it for a month and see how many are hitting late or not. And then we can figure out what additionally. we need.
That's the key, is getting more information before we make additional
Right.
changes to the penalty structure. And I think we'll have the capability to get the information, which I
Right.
think was the biggest concern. So now it's just, let's work with the parties to figure out how we can start to gather information, what makes the most sense. Is it a big administrative lift for them? If it is, then it becomes a conversation of, okay, well, we need some information, so how do we get to consensus there? And then we can come back to you next year informally and let you know what we
Great.
reviewed.
Thank you. I think on that note, we're going to turn to Damien
Absolutely.
and look at the bill and the draft 3.1, which represents, Damien, if you'd be kind enough to join us, which represents the consensus work, what we've come together on. And we have one additional thing I want to share with the committee. We had an ask, as you recall from Thursday, the department wasn't thrilled with the increase in the dependent benefit, although some of us think since 1981, it needs an update. Our House counterparts, given how late we are in the session, in order to avoid either a conference committee or going back and forth again, our House counterparts, Chair Marcotte and his committee, have asked that we put in a 5-year sunset to review the amount of the dependent benefit. And so I asked Damien to include that in this, just so that it would be reviewed in 5 years. Is that a fair way of describing it? It's so that is incorporated in this draft, and they just want to make sure that it gets reviewed and see how it's working. Of course, in 5 years, it probably may need to be increased again, but wherever we are, it will be reviewed. By building in the sunset, it'll mean it will be reviewed. And I hope that means the Department of Labor is modestly more sanguine. And anyway, so we will hear. So Damien, would you be kind enough to share with us draft 3.1 and what we have incorporated as a result of our work?
Sure. Good morning. For the record, I'm Damien Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. You should all have a 37-page draft in front of you on your devices, etc. So the
Or in our hands.
or in your hands, yes. The changes are highlighted in yellow. So for purposes of brevity, unless there's something you want to revisit from last time, I'm going to focus on what we changed from the last draft.
Right.
So the first change, you'll notice that there is some gray highlighting. Those are old changes from the last draft.
That's sort of what happens when we get old and we make changes. We get grayer.
Yes, I think the legislative session does that to all of us. So the first changes are in section 6 on page 7.
And this is what you had emailed us.
Yes, so if you'll remember, last time we were working with an issue that was cropping up around temporary partial disability benefits. So the original fix proposed had addressed issues for lower income individuals where they were receiving less if they chose to return to work. So the language here would guarantee that those individuals are held harmless, but it also avoids the flip side of that, which was that the new language was going to inadvertently take wage earners who were in the middle of the wage scale and decrease the benefits that they would receive. So what we're saying here is the greater of either the difference between the amount the injured employee would be eligible to receive and the wage they earn during the period of disability. So just making up the difference so that they're held harmless, or the current formula, which is 2/3 of the difference between their average weekly wage before the injury and the amount they're earning during the period of disability. So that allows, what's going to happen really is that for what we call the 90 percenters, they're going to be under the first formula, the difference between what they would receive in workers' comp benefits and what they're earning. For people who are above the minimum, they're going to be under the old formula. And then for people who are at the minimum weekly benefit, that's where the adjuster is going to have to figure out which formula to apply. So if you look at the handout I prepared for you,
Yeah,
you'll see
that was
that there's a point at that minimum weekly benefit where the formula, where you switch from one formula to the other. And it'll depend on things like dependency benefits and so forth, but that's where the calculation is going to have to
Yeah.
happen.
So, yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's those middle
Like that.
middle two options.
the middle two, it's 700 a week and the 802 a week are the two that where you, well, and actually the last one you have both the old and
Well, I've shown old and new under all of them, just so you can see the difference. But what you'll see is 802 is the maximum average weekly wage that you can have and still earn the minimum weekly benefit. And then 700 is a point and at 802, the old formula works better for you. But at 700, so just $100 less per week, the new formula would work better for you. And so that is just to illustrate how there is that turning point in there, and it'll be somewhat situational depending on dependency benefits and other things.
no, this was very helpful.
So, okay,
Okay,
the
Any
next
questions?
changes.
No,
Oh,
thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
No, it was
Yep.
good. Thanks.
right,
So the next change, section 7, this is where we get to what has created some confusion this morning. This is the 5-year sunset on the $20 per week dependency benefit. So if you'll remember in subsection B of section 6, we added a $20 per week dependency benefit for the temporary partial disability benefits. And this is taking it away. So this is sunsetting that benefit. Of course, the legislature can always not withstand this or revise this in the future, depending on how it plays out. So this was as of today, you're not allowed to you don't get a dependency benefit if you're on temporary partial disability benefits. This bill would add that benefit.
right.
And so section 7 is just repealing that in 5 years. Does that make sense?
Yes,
And-
but we are adding a $20 dependency, that we're increasing the dependency benefit from $10 to $20
For temporary total disability benefits.
for temporary total, but not for temporary partial.
For temporary partial, there is no dependency benefit currently. We're adding a $20 dependency benefit and then sunsetting that new benefit.
Right.
in
So we're
5 years.
adding a $20 temporary, we're adding $20 dependent benefit for both temporary and total in this bill, total,
Yep. Yeah, temporary partial and temporary total.
temporary partial and temporary total, right? No, I'm clear, okay.
All right, I'm not. So I see where you deleted the temporary partial.
So look directly above it. This is where we add it on July 1 of this year.
Okay.
So on line 8 of page 8, we're
We have the
adding
$20.
that,
And
and then
But I thought that, okay, yeah, that
So-
is temporary partial.
yep, and then the next section is the sunset section, which takes effect on July 1, 2028. And this would repeal that $20, that dependency benefit for temporary partial,
Right.
because we don't currently have it, so we're going back to the status quo
This is what,
in 5 years.
and Keisha, who's just joined us, I said before you joined us, and I don't know if you were listening, but House Commerce, to facilitate the passage of this bill without our having to do a conference committee or go back and forth, has asked us to do a sunset on the increase of the dependency benefit in 5 years, to look at it in 5 years and see if it's adequate, see, just to review it.
All right,
Okay,
sorry,
so,
I'm just still not getting it because this is crossed out.
Yes, so when we sunset something, we repeal it.
So where
So
does it
this is-
say that this is effective?
In the effective date section at the end of the.
So
code.
at the end, it throws it all up. You
Okay,
just have to go and look at
okay,
the end.
All right.
Yeah, so the effective dates, we'll look at those
You
in
just
a
have to know
minute.
that. All right.
But yeah, so section 7 and
All right,
section
I
9
see
take
it.
effect July 1, 2028.
Okay. That's the code.
As a,
That's okay.
as a repeal, but they will take effect
So
July
section
1st.
6 and 8, which
Yeah.
create, either create the dependency benefit or increase it, take effect July 1 of this year.
So, thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
let's keep going. We got the sunset
All
for
right.
the first piece. Okay,
Section 8, don't think we have any changes. We don't. So section 9 is the next change. And again, this is the sunset of the increase in the dependency benefit for temporary total disability benefits.
got it.
So you'll see that we're reverting from $20 to $10. So going back to the status quo, or the current status quo, in 5 years' time. Again, we can simply, we can change this language at any time in the next 5 years if the legislature decides to. Or if it turns out that this is creating a huge expense or some other adverse impact, you can revisit the dependency benefit at that time
Right,
and do other things.
which is what Chair Marcotte asked us just to build in a way to review it.
All right, or a planned going back if nothing is done.
Yeah.
So is there any sort of nudge to us, a reminder,
So,
or do we rely on?
so
We rely on legislative council.
there are two sort of nudges built into the system. One is the advocates who are here in the room with you.
Yeah,
If they're concerned about the sunset and its impact, they'll be in touch. The other is that legislative council keeps a database of all the sunsets in all of the Vermont titles. And each year we look at what's coming up. We notify our chairs that we have sunsets coming up in their sections. Chairs get a copy of this report, I think. And other members can access it at any time. We'll provide you with the report. But there are literally hundreds of sunsets every
Okay.
single year.
but they're flagged.
They are
We
flagged.
flag
by
them.
council.
Some of them we let happen, others, they were specifically put in, like the one that we're undoing earlier in this bill about the 14-day extension if your benefits are being discontinued. So that was originally, I think, a 3-year sunset. It was extended for several more years. And now after, I think, a 7-year trial period,
We are.
it's being made permanent.
Okay,
There are all sorts of options to address this. I mean, one is to always just push it out if you need more time. The other is to undo it, and there are different ways to do that depending on what the approach is. But we do, part of the work we do in the summertime is for each bill that gets enacted, we provide a list of sunsets to my colleague Katie McGlynn, who maintains the database, and then she circulates it to all of us. We verify it and we push it out to committee chairs and so forth to make sure they're aware of what's coming.
great.
No, it's astonishing what happens once we are out of here and all the off-session work.
As much as I wish it were different, we don't just get to spend the summer in
No.
our lounge
So
chairs.
it's nice, now Katie is the sunset queen and now Anthea is the technical corrections queen.
Yes.
And so, we have people who are in charge of sort of these ongoing things that we track.
Right, and then,
Great to know.
several of us head up the statutory revision that incorporates stuff into the green book.
Right.
So, there are a lot of different summer tasks that we take on to make sure that we don't lose track of things or that things. get
Okay,
the
like,
green
To
books
make
done.
sure that I understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
What we've said is that we're going to pay $20 per week for someone who is on temporary total disability, correct?
And temporary partial.
Yep, so temporary partial and temporary total, what we're doing is we're paying $20 per week for each dependent child who is under 21 years of age.
Total and partial.
for total, temporary total and temporary partial.
Mm-hmm.
For temporary partial, this is brand new. For
Mhm.
temporary total, we're increasing from $10 to
10 to
$20. And then in 5 years' time, if no action happens,
We're adding 10 more,
No,
we're going from 20 back to
back
10.
to 10.
yeah, if
Yeah.
it's not,
Oh, I-
if
So
we
you
don't,
see, if you look on line 3 of page
Right,
11,
I'm looking
20
at
is
line
struck
3.
out and
20
we're
struck
reverting
out.
to $10 per week.
if,
So it would have the benefit and return it to where it is now for temporary total. And for temporary partial,
it would
which was
disappear.
up on,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't, excuse me.
yep, and then up on pages 8 and 9, we're eliminating the temporary partial dependent benefit that we're enacting this year. So that would sunset that
Okay,
benefit.
so when 7 and 9 go together, the net effect is taking the 20 back to 10.
Right,
Taking it back to the current, which is just 10 for
status quo.
temporary total and nothing for temporary partial.
Does Bill come with a translator?
I know.
It comes
Well,
with
there's the
legislative council.
I will put
Which-
together, when the bill gets out of here, I will put together an updated section by section that has all of this in there. Hopefully
But that's-
in plain enough English that it'll translate well for a
So
Florida.
it's our job to translate into English for our colleagues. Okay, so next change, do we all understand this enough to move forward? Okay.
We understand it enough, yes. I won't go to the second stage yet.
Okay, so
Right.
Damien, next we hit some gray.
Yep, and the next several changes in yellow you see is just renumbering sections. Until we get to the very bottom of page 15.
Well, and 13 was gray is just current changes we already agreed to. Okay,
Yeah,
15.
Yeah.
Right. Oh,
so very bottom of page 15, all I've done is this used to say sections 4 through 9, now it's sections 4 through
Right.
11.
because of the sunset.
So, yeah, it's worth noting too that this is setting a deadline for the Department of Labor to adopt rules to implement these provisions. The provisions, though, do take effect on July 1, 2023. So the dependent benefit will go up, et cetera. But this is basically saying to the Department of Labor, you have to get any necessary rules around this enacted in the next year.
By July of 24.
Yeah, so this understanding that it takes time to enact
Right.
rule changes that might need to reflect the law here, but the law is updated. The statute trumps rules.
Got it.
So there seemed to be a little confusion in the NCCI memo about that. And I just wanted to clarify that the statute trumps rules. So if the rules are inconsistent, they either need to be updated or they're obsolete because they're no longer in line with statute. So,
Or ignored,
Right.
right.
not right.
So, section 13, just updating the section number, same in section 14, same in section 15.
Same all the way through.
Yeah, I think we're all the way to the finish line. For about 20 pages of unemployment insurance changes. So this is all H55. And we don't have any changes in that bill. You're essentially sending it back to the House.
So we're
as
sending it back
passed.
to the hall.
Yep. And that brings us to the effective dates in section 21 on page 37. And the changes here are renumbering changes. So section 14, which is the delayed effective date for the nonprofit changes in the unemployment insurance statutes. And then you'll see section 7 and 9, the sunset being set for July 1, 2028. And that's it.
Terrific. Thank you very much for that work.
You're welcome.
What was the House's objection on the whole issue regarding the $20 and $10. Was it the increase? Well,
The House wasn't asked to discuss it, I don't believe. Did they have an active discussion on it? Well, I've been keeping, just as we get near the end of session, we meet once a week with the House leadership. And we've been talking about this bill, and he asked for me to share any changes that are made in it. So we've discussed it. And they thought about it, and they came back and asked for this sunset, just for us to review it. So it forces us to review it in 5 years, and that's what they've asked to, so that we won't have to go back and forth
I'm
with.
just trying to understand what's the rationale for doing it. Are they objecting to the amount? Or
No,
objecting
I don't
to
think
the
they're
increase?
objecting. I think
Are
it
they
just gives
objecting
them
to the
time.
payment at all, or what's the purpose of this?
I think you'd have to ask Marcotte, but my understanding is
Yeah, but
that
we're the
it-
ones who are doing it. I just like to understand why.
and we can ask him, but my understanding is it's an increase, and they just want a chance to see what its impact is on the budget and on workers' comp. I think that's what they're asking. David, you or Joel, does anybody have a further thought?
David McComber here on behalf of Workers Vermont. I think that the thought was because, well, however slight, of an increase in cost of the system, NCCI said 300,000 of $116 million comp system. That is, obviously the administration wasn't supportive of it, so Chair Marcotte just wanted to have an opportunity to see how it goes and then revisit if it's problematic, or if it's not problematic, then we can, extend it at that.
I mean, were the opponents objecting because of the price, or were the opponents objecting to the overall principle that workers' comp is supposed to be compensation for income, and so a dependent benefit at all seems to be contrary to the intent?
Well, I'll let them speak for themselves.
I'm just wondering what
So
we've heard in committee, in particularly in the House, that we haven't heard here on that subject.
I'm not sure the House discussed this. And that's why Chair Marcotte is wanting us to move forward with the bill and just building in a way for them to come back and review it.
Well, you mentioned that the administration is opposed to it. What do the representatives of the administration have to say about that?
Cam and Dirk.
Yeah, real quick, Cameron Wood, Vermont Department of Labor. Our position is there is a dependent benefit already in temp code. And so, from our perspective, I think we understand the point that workers' comp is supposed to be wage replacement and not adding dependent benefits. We've had that position in the past when it comes to unemployment insurance, but similar conversations have happened. It's about wage replacement, but in efforts to try to get something to the committee where all parties could potentially agree, we recognize that taking a position of recalculating how workers' comp is provided, how the benefit calculation is provided, is a little bit out of scope for where we're at in the session at this point in time. So the department doesn't support this, primarily given the fact that it's going to be an increased cost in the system, and that is likely to be passed on to employers through increased premiums. And so we're not going to support that. If for us, we haven't had a fundamental conversation about whether dependent benefits make sense, given that it's wage replacement, as you were identifying, Senator Brock. So I don't want to take a strong position on that. I mean, it's in statute now.
I was gonna say it's
Fundamental
in
issue, all of
statute.
this.
We have,
So I think that is a more fundamental conversation about what the wage replacement should be and should it reflect dependent benefit. And I just think at this point we're late in the session, and I don't know if it makes sense to have that conversation.
so our follow-up, and then we'll go to David. Our follow-up is, will this help the department get to yes with a sunset?
I don't know that it's going to help us get to yes on that piece of the bill. I mean, we support everything else. in
Right,
the
we're clear. Yeah.
From our perspective, again, we're not going to support something that is potentially going to increase cost to employers at this point. And so I appreciate the sunset, and I mentioned to others this morning, I really appreciate people trying to get to a compromise here. I'm letting you know what our position is on that piece. And that would then be up to you in the House to determine whether or not you want to move it forward.
Right, and I think that's what Chair Marcotte is trying to get at, is get everyone to yes, if we can. David, what was your thought?
I just wanted to say, to Senator Brock, I'd love to have a conversation about wage replacement, because people are getting 2/3 of their average wage, not true wage replacement.
Mhm.
Even though it's untaxed, nobody that's receiving comp benefits, well, I shouldn't say nobody, unlikely that they're being taxed at 33 to 30%. So they're losing when they're on comp. So if we want to talk about wage replacement, maybe, not in the context of this bill, but
Mhm.
talking about true wage replacement, I'd love to have that conversation.
Yeah.
If we went to 100% wage replacement.
Yeah, and whether or not that was ever the intent of workers' comp to be 100% in the first
Sure.
place would be part of that discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good question. I'm just curious, when was workers' comp first enacted?
100+ years.
I think in the 30s.
In the 30s?
Yeah.
No, I was wrong, earlier.
Be a 100-year.
Anniversary. Thank you. Like just that was like, what, how many years ago? 30?
Yeah, it was shortly after I started here. for the 100th anniversary, yeah. So,
100
Shortly after you started here,
103+.
103 years
Been here a
plus,
while.
okay,
yeah,
great.
108.
it was, yeah, pre-pandemic, for sure. So, I mean, no, the 100th anniversary.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
definitely pre-pandemic.
Actually, we've had workers comp through 2 pandemics now, so.
Oh, wow.
We had
Uh,
it for
Yeah.
2 pandemics, and we had it in the recession too. I mean, we've had it through a bunch of
And the
challenges.
depression and wars, yeah. lots
Yeah,
of stuff has
it's an old system.
Yeah,
So
well, and it needs
predates unemployment.
It
for
needs
sure.
attention and updating every once in a while. So thank you for that. Anybody else? Okay, great. I think committee, where are we?
I'm ready to vote.
What are we voting on?
We're voting,
Draft
we're
3.1.
drafting on
This one.
3.1
And
and
it contains
it contains this sunset on
on
the
the-
$20 temporary partial and
Okay.
temporary total.
and that
which-
was at the suggestion of Representative Markup.
Correct.
No, but the
Okay.
likelihood of a sunset like that being sunsetted is incredibly remote.
It is
Did
very
not exist
remote,
then.
but I think the
Kidding
hope
ourselves if we say anything else.
I think the hope with Chair Marcotte was to hopefully move the administration into more support.
This is how this
And
got
gives-
passed 108 years ago.
Right.
Well,
Well, then they will have the true date to celebrate, and maybe they'll
We still
celebrate.
had child labor 100
Yeah.
years ago.
We still have child labor in this country at the moment, as the New York
Yes, we
Times
do.
has pointed out. So I think if there is no further discussion, I would entertain a motion to move this bill.
That I heard.
I'll move it. Can I
Okay.
move it? Okay. All right, so.
Move it to vote it out favorably.
So move to vote H 217 favorably. I have made the motion. So Senator Brock, how do you vote?
Oh, yes.
Senator Clarkson,
Yes.
Senator Cummings,
Yes,
Senator Harrison is a yes. Senator Rom Hinsdale?
Yes.
Yes, great. So the vote is 5-0-0.
And Wendy, I would love to ask you to report this. Happy to help you. And we could do 2 pieces of it together, but if we could do that.
I can
together,
do it.
Okay.
You're doing it.
That would be great.
Okay.
That would be terrific. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your work together. Much appreciated. Getting to yes is something we all appreciate. So thank you, and particularly at this point in the game.
All right, Senator Harrison, I sent you a final version. I also sent it to Scott, so.
Great,
That-
terrific.
I don't know how you guys filed up with the Senate Secretary anymore.
We have to walk it
We
up in
take a
person and
sheet of
give it.
paper.
Still-
Scott knows how to do it. He lets me know.
Yeah.
Still do it the old fashioned way. I appreciate that. So much else has changed here since we went remote, so.
This is true. So, moving on, while Damien is sitting there, we got S-73 back.
Yes,
And I would like us to, which is the firefighter bill, as you all will recall.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your work. Much appreciated.
And there will be questions before my, that
Oh,
I'll have for you. Yes, yes. No, I don't mean to.
Also, reach out.
Thank you.
right. Thank you. Really good. Okay, so we have before us the House proposal of amendment to our firefighter bill. And Damien, would you be kind enough? It was so convenient that we had you booked already.
Yeah.
So I think I reported this. So would you be kind enough to update us on what the House wants to do to change our trillion?
Yeah, they did not make a lot of changes. So if you don't mind, I'm just gonna take a second here to,
Yes, you could shift gears.
yeah, I'm gonna do just a comparison of the documents.
Oh.
So.
We don't have a side by side on this one because it sounds like we maybe don't need.
Yeah, yeah, so just give me
So
a
they added
second
stuff.
here. They did,
They
so,
added a lot.
not as much as you're thinking,
Okay, or as it looks.
yes. So, but
Keisha,
just give me 2
Okay.
seconds here,
and
and
Scott, how
I'm
can
pulling that
Keisha
up.
look, see it?
I put it on.
Okay, it's on the website, Keisha.
Okay, this is a proposal of
This is
amendment.
the House proposal of amendment
Right,
to S-73.
Mhm.
okay. There we go. I just had to find the documents and pull them out. So the first change you're going to see is within the definition or the list of disabling cancers, which you'll find on page 2, lines 12 to 15. The House added lung cancer to that list. Otherwise, they left the list unchanged from what passed the Senate. So that's the first change.
Sorry, I'm just totally,
Page
I'm so
2.
blind.
Page 2,
I
line
mean-
14.
Okay, oh, okay, got
Lung right after liver and before
it,
pancreas.
right?
Okay.
And we had
That's a
added,
big one, actually. I think we were concerned about that because of just smoking,
right,
but that is a very likely cancer for
Right,
firefighters.
and
Right.
it was something that this committee discussed, but I think part of it was, given the constraints on your time to hear testimony. You sent it to the House, they had a little more time for testimony and agreed to add lung, based on the testimony they heard. So the next change in here is actually, in the,
Romanettes.
yep, so when we get to section 2, there
What?
was,
Is this not oh, this is our, so when it's underlined, it doesn't mean these are the House changes necessarily. They also include our changes.
yes.
Okay,
yes.
I'm sorry, because I realized that when I'm looking at line 14.
Right, if you want
Our-
to see if you want to see the House changes to your changes, you have to look at the official version, which is not always the easiest to
Oh, I hate
read
that.
because it usually shows the strikeout. So the first change is in section 2 on page 4. What you'll notice, well, you probably won't even notice this because if you're not comparing them side by side, it's impossible to see. So in the Senate version, you had a 6th part to the report, and that was looking at potentially adding or removing some of the limitations on the eligibility. And the reason that's removed is because section 3 adds a new study done by DOL and DFR to look at the impact on the workers' comp system of adjusting the limitations. And they took it away from Division of Fire Safety to try to allow
Oh.
Division of Fire Safety to focus on what it specializes in.
Okay.
So
good.
that is the change there.
we've added, so section 3 is an additional study.
Yep, section 3 is brand new language from the House. So that's where I'll focus.
So it's being done by, okay,
So it directs labor and financial regulation in consultation with the Division of Fire Safety to submit a report on the potential impacts on workers' compensation claims, premiums, and loss costs of amending or repealing the provisions that bar a firefighter from the presumption if they are either over 65 or have used tobacco products within the last 10 years. So that was from the Senate version. They've added an additional look at potential impacts of expanding the list of cancers to include either additional types of cancer that occur more frequently in firefighters than the general public, that are caused by carcinogens to which firefighters are exposed in the line of duty, or both, or alternatively to expanding it to all forms of cancer. This was again something that was discussed in this committee, but there wasn't time for testimony. The Senate, even though it took additional testimony, felt that this really required an expert look from DFR and DOL and time to consult with NCCI and other stakeholders to try to get a better sense of what the impact would be on the system. So one of the things that's been interesting to look at in other states is as they've expanded the cancers for firefighters, it hasn't always resulted in improved access to the system because of other tweaks that may have needed to be made, or potential increased incentives to deny claims, et cetera. And so this will allow them time to sort of wade through all of that information, first identifying other things that potentially should be added, how much is it going to cost the system under our current structure, et cetera. So that's this just gives them more time to study that. The third issue that came up is the question of how to apportion liability, and this was brought by the LCT. They had a claim where they have a professional firefighter who their full-time job is as a firefighter for one municipality, but they're also a volunteer in their hometown. They were diagnosed with cancer, and the question came, well, they're employed by 2 fire departments. How do we apportion liability? They ended up reaching a settlement in that case that apportioned liability, but they asked if it would be possible to provide more guidance, whether it's a weighted balance based on number of calls or number of hours or something like that, or whether there's another way to apportion liability. The other question that came up is, what if you have someone who starts off in, say, the Burlington department as a professional, then they become a professional at South Burlington or Montpelier, another town municipality that has a professional department. And while this is happening, they're a volunteer in at least 1, possibly 2 or 3 other towns. And then at the end of this 10-year look back period, where they've moved through multiple departments, they get diagnosed with cancer, and you're looking back. Over that 10 years. How do you deal with these questions? Fortunately, we haven't had that case yet, but the concern is that at some point this will come up, and it would be good for the firefighter if their insurance companies aren't fighting over who has to pay what, and instead are just.
They also have other jobs. My electrician was a
Right.
full-time firefighter.
So.
He
Yep.
wouldn't take down the asbestos ceiling in my back basement, but if he had to do the wiring, that could be an exposure.
Right, so that gets more into overcoming the presumption. So for example, in that case, if you have a worker who maybe their full-time job is asbestos remediation, and then as they volunteer as a firefighter, there could be arguments about if they get mesothelioma or something that's linked to asbestos.
There's all kinds of national companies that will deal with that.
Well, Right, but there could be arguments then.
Yes, that
From
I
the
assume would be.
Fire
the-
department's workers' comp
Yes.
insurer, that maybe this isn't covered by the presumption there, but is
Right.
rather something related to their other job. And in both cases, though, they're both, it'd be workers' comp, but you'd have the workers' comp carriers potentially.
So this is,
about it.
this is where I need to always learn more. To go to Wendy's point earlier this morning, it's just, that we always learn, every bill has us learning more things. So there isn't,
So
you think of workers' comp as a whole system.
It is.
And that you think it could absorb a professional who had multiple
So the important.
jobs that were in the same line of work, and that it could absorb an illness, not needing to know specifically which employer. I mean, but it doesn't work,
But it's not
It's
that way because it's
right?
private.
Because they're
Private insurers providing the insurance coverage within the
for
marketplace
individual business,
for individual businesses, right? So,
which is the challenge.
and it,
So it isn't a system in that regard.
It is not a state system.
So-
It is an individual insurance product.
Right, so unlike UI, which is, well, anyway,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
UI is a state system.
right, so UI follows the
Because-
worker. And it's one system, covers every worker. With workers' comp, you
It's-
have numerous insurers.
yeah, as we found out.
And numerous rules depending on your profession. Some professions have presumptions built in around certain conditions, others do not. And so the causation and the proof required to get coverage is going to depend, particularly for these exposure diseases here, where exposure to carcinogens can result in cancer. Cancer has got an extremely long latency period potentially.
Yeah.
And so for firefighters, we built in the presumption. For other types of work, you may not have that presumption. So, but
So just, I think a quick question. So most firefighters work for municipalities or something similar, the fire districts. So,
Actually,
does-
the vast majority are volunteers.
right,
Yeah.
but still they're covered by the
Yeah.
well,
municipality. The municipality is the
so
employer.
not every volunteer fire department is run by the municipality.
Right.
Some of them are independent of the municipality.
Fire districts.
Right,
So-
but most firefighters total, I would think, but I could even just say a large amount of them. But I don't know, does VLCT provide
So,
workers' comp? Because I know they do
Yes.
provide some sorts of.
so BLTCT, through its insurance trust, provides workers' comp.
Okay,
They cover the professional firefighters, I believe, and some of the volunteer departments, but not all.
right,
So in the case I described earlier, where there was a question of apportioning coverage, they covered one department, but not the other.
so, okay, so will they be part of the report and the study?
They are, so let me get to that.
Okay, so let's,
Okay.
So they're not specifically named, but the report may include legislative act, recommendations.
so where are you now? Sorry, I've lost you. I thought you were on
So
page 5.
if we go, starting at the bottom of page 5, going on to page 6, the report can include legislative recommendations for everything that's studied. And then if you go back to page 4, section 3, it provides that commissioners of labor and financial regulation in consultation with Division of Fire Safety are submitting the report. It is silent on who they have to consult with.
Mhm.
Originally, it had said, shall consult with NCCI. NCCI asked that they not be named specifically, even though the departments will likely consult with them. to the extent that there may be other stakeholders that have information, the departments are also free to consult with them. Depending on their constraints in terms of time and so forth and what they're able to produce. So that VLCT is not part of this report.
Did they ask to be part of it?
No, they did not that I'm aware of. So,
And anybody, I mean, there's no reason they can't be consulted.
No, I understand,
Right.
but it would be, to my mind, it would be foolish if you were doing this study to not consult with them. I can just say that with
so
the amount of firefighters that they cover, they would be an obvious organization to consult with.
We can put in stakeholders.
I don't know if we need to. I'm asking.
So there's nothing in here that prevents the departments from consulting with other stakeholders. And then it really is, they're looking at trying to determine the loss costs and so forth, based on the information that is available to them. There's already indication, they've already indicated that they'll reach out to NCCI for some of that.
Right.
NCCI has limited data on this. Because I believe many municipalities are self-insured or through an insurance trust that's not tracked by NCCI. So that would be a reason to reach out to the LCT. But we have the department here, so I would let them speak for themselves, if that's okay.
So, yes,
So Dirk Anderson, Director of Workers' Compensation Safety with the Department of Labor. Since we will be charged with conducting the study, I anticipate reaching out to all interested parties. And since the League of Cities and Towns ensures the majority of professional firefighters, I will certainly reach out to them. It is,
right,
they're a natural partner for this study.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dirk. That's very helpful. So anything else, Damien, as we finish going through this?
No, so that is it. So they added that section to look at, to sort of expand the impact or look at various potential legislative changes, and then the effective date stays the same. So really, they took the
They've done
Senate
four
bill,
things,
they added lung cancer
right?
to the list of cancers, and they've added the new study at the end, which took part of the study that the Senate had passed and then expanded on looking at potential legislative changes.
Yeah.
So that's really the if you could sum it up as two changes.
Yeah, you could. I mean, there are two other little changes in there, but
They're little tweaks, but
they're
they're
main changes.
they can be summarized in those two main changes. So that is it for S73. Are there other questions?
Yes, about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, tons of questions, but I think at the moment, let us consider S73. Any comments? Because I would entertain a motion for us to accept the proposal of amendment from the House, and
Yeah, I think the motion is to concur.
I would agree, the motion is
And
to
I will make
concur.
that motion.
Thank you, we would look
Concur
forward.
with how? I don't have a sheet.
I bet one is coming.
I could just write stuff down and then transfer it. Okay,
Perfect.
ready? So there's not a version number. It's just, the motion was to concur with House amendments to
Proposal of
S-
amendment.
Amendment.
proposal of amendment
To
to
S.
S73.
Perfect.
And it was moved by Senator Cunningham.
Cummings.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm not awake either.
All right, so I will call the roll. Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Clarkson,
Yes,
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Harrison, yes. Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Great, so it is 500.
Great, and I need to take that up, given I'm
Yeah.
the recorder of the firefighter.
Okay, and
I believe I
Senator
will.
Clarkson will be the reporter.
Yeah. We'll
Yeah,
continue.
there's no, you just stand up and say, we ask the body to concur.
Okay,
This is the easy one.
There are too many. Yeah.
but did you? but
Yeah,
you-
I'm the
but you
reporter of the
wanted to,
bill, so I
right?
have to do this.
Okay, okay,
That's my job.
great.
This is, probably the least controversial bill I've worked on this time, so.
Say, this is a piece of cake.
You are always in the thick of it, sir.
I think they're getting it tossed up with Ellen this year.
Yeah, oh,
You and Ellen.
there are some, yeah.
Thank you,
Ellen
gentlemen.
and-
Thank you for your
Ellen
work on
and
this as
Katie
well.
have some hard.
Thanks,
days.
Dirk, and thank you for taking on this study.
There's a bunch
Great.
of controversy.
Because, so we no longer have the study from this is a strike all, so this is the sum total of the bill now. There is no T to fire. Okay, so may I turn to our confirmations? Did anybody, I have one person to confirm.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I have one.
And you have one, okay, great, because we each had gotten extra ones, and I have to say, being able to email, thank you, Damien, more to follow. We got additional people, and we need to finish these up this week. I couldn't figure out why Wendy Knights wasn't on the.
It's because I had moved her down to the numbers you saw.
Yeah, in the, up on in the Senate calendar. I couldn't figure out why she wasn't there.
Oh, they
Okay.
cut it off. They didn't do a whole bunch that I did either.
Okay, well, I'll go ask Vanessa what's
Still not
going
sure
on.
I've done very
So
well.
having their emails was really helpful because I emailed Roger Donegan, who was my Labor Relations Board person that we needed to chat with. And it was so much easier. I emailed him, he got back to me right away. We set up a time to talk and it meant no phone tag, which was really useful. So I think, Scott, as we go forward, getting those emails, if they could send us emails as well, that would be really useful from the administration. So Ann, you want to go first with your person?
Okay. I had Megan Sicchio to the Board of Liquor Lottery. I don't know, is she gonna get gambling on there too?
Yes, she is.
I met Megan many years ago, at least 10. We were both on the board for South Vermont Home Health and Hospice. She was appointed last year to fill out a one-year term. Somebody had left. So this is her second appointment. She really likes it and would like to be reappointed. She lives in Northfield and she has worked for the Northfield Savings Bank for 31 years, which is longer than I've been here, so it's a long time. She's very enthusiastic. We
Great.
played text tag because she was traveling all week. But I did talk to her last night, so I would move that we recommend to the Senate that they confirm the appointment of Megan Sicchio of Northfield to the Board of Liquor and Lottery.
Thank you.
Sounds good to me. Do we vote on this?
We just do a
General,
yeah.
yes.
So,
Nod,
Yes.
yes.
and if you would just be, I
Say
think
all
we do
those
need
in
to take a
favor.
sheet up.
All
to
those in
Vanessa.
favor. signify
All
by
those
saying
in
aye.
favor?
All right.
Aye. And we thank Megan for her service.
Thank
That's-
you, Megan.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, I have Roger Donegan to report from Heinsberg. And Roger has been reappointed to the Vermont Labor Relations Board. And he first started in 2019. He loves this board. It's a great board to work on in retirement. We have a new, as you know, Tim Noonan retired, and we have a new
Oh, I
executive
didn't know Tim
director.
had retired.
Yeah,
Oh, no, he retired some time ago,
not that long
a
ago.
couple of years.
Well, a couple of years. Yeah,
Yeah,
pandemic
I mean-
has sort of
Tim's a friend.
Tim is wonderful, and Judith Dillon is the new executive director. Roger came to Vermont, married a Vermonter, and when he was in the Navy, and came to Vermont and worked at Burlington
We
Electric.
didn't even forgive his pension.
But yeah, he has two
Well, we'll see
pensions.
if he stays.
Oh, he's staying. In Burlington, he came up to work for Burlington Electric in 1980, and they helped form a union in the 90s, and he was the chief steward for 20 years. In addition to his being the head of environmental compliance for Burlington Electric. And he respects the work of the Labor Relations Board. He has the time for it. And interestingly, he filled the O'Neill spot after that discussion. You remember that, Karen O'Neill? Anyway, he thoroughly enjoys this work and enjoys the docket work. And he thinks it's a real natural extension of the work he did before. And it requires a huge amount of reading and research. And his expertise, he feels, is well used on this board, and he can give the time and energy and experience to it now. He has 2 kids who are farmers in Heinsberg, which is impressive.
Cool.
And anyway, he asks that we reappoint him and confirm and recommend his confirmation to the Senate.
Great.
So with that, I would propose that we recommend Roger Donegan to the entire Senate for confirmation on the Vermont Labor Relations Board.
Okay, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Randy, are you making any headway on your people?
I made some headway on finance confirmations, but not on this.
So
I
you,
told Jill to put them on for Friday.
okay, so who are you still needing, Randy? You're still needing
Right
Michelle
now,
Phelps,
I've got,
Linda
me,
Joy?
I've got Michelle Phelps. No, Michelle Phelps is not mine. Oh, well, I guess she is mine. I take that back. Michelle Phelps, Linda Joy Sullivan, James Stewart, and Marty Manahan. And then,
Marty.
I guess
So-
somebody added, was it Thad Richardson, who I don't know, just added to the list.
I have a Corey Richardson.
Now, is
So,
it Thad Richardson?
yeah. So
Do you
could
have a
we
phone
get-
number for him? Because I don't have a number. I've got a,
And could we get emails for them? Because I have to say that was really helpful. If we could get emails for all our people, it would be super helpful.
Emails because I'm the best, but not because the administration helps.
Oh, that's not good. Then if we could let the administration know that the emails.
I already done that at great length.
I will do some more digging.
Okay.
Well, if they won't do it,
I've got-
Senator.
You know, I put a call into the person, Tracy, who handles that, and she's called me back, and I've got to get back to her today. Because basically what we're facing, and it's throughout the Senate is just.
Yeah, no, it's just a
They
huge
need to
fun.
let people know that you expect a call and call back.
Or you're liable to get voted no on.
Yeah,
Well, what's useful about emailing them ahead of time is they know why you're called. when you
Exactly.
do call. So, on that, so we're gonna get, and Wendy, do you have anybody?
I don't know if I have any. I'm sorry, I'm looking,
Did you-
but I
yeah.
don't.
You did, I think, all 3, Steve
What?
Goodrich, Brian Thomas, and Mark.
Mark,
Gregorczyk.
No, I wasn't able to reach him. It was a disconnected number.
Then we added John Russell.
Okay, so I have not contacted him. I'm sorry.
okay, I think I've done mine.
Okay,
So you need.
and you
Mark-
probably sent me that information, right?
I'll
Send
do
it.
some more looking for more things.
Thanks. I'm sorry.
So Wendy, you need
I don't, yeah,
contact info
Mark,
for
I
Mark
don't have,
Gregorczyk,
yes,
and you need contact info for, what's his name?
John.
Russell. Is that the John Russell, Rod in Washington County?
Rutland?
No, wrong John.
Oh, I do remember volunteering for the Rutland person. Yes.
Okay, now, so, with with our passing out H217, other than finishing our walkthrough with H66 paid family leave, which we need to do, and
Why?
our because it's polite. And are my checking out with Tom Stevens, the making sure that H 213 is pretty fully embedded in S100, which I believe it is. I think we have done our H bills with, which is great.
What's
So-
the bill that should be embedded?
It was the study committee on the mobile home parks and the mobile home park infrastructure, which is embedded in S100. And so I think we're fine, but I just haven't had a chance to double check. I think we're fine for this year, and anything additional we would want to do.
I guess overall, are we comfortable with how we've resolved the housing for the homeless issues? That, is obviously surfacing in the press more and more, and is obviously an issue. Are we comfortable with what we've done?
I don't think we're ever comfortable. I think.
Well, I mean, again, we realize, but, is there a solution? We talk about additional shelters and so on. What bill provides additional shelters?
I think it's bigger than that.
Well, I
think
know, but I'm saying
But our
to
housing
get from
bill,
here to
yeah.
there.
Yeah,
They're
there's
in the
some in
budget.
there.
But when you ask, are we satisfied? To me, until we
The
address
housing bill doesn't do shit.
the reasons
Yes, if you
people
can't
become
sell them.
homeless.
Yes, it is. But
I
it
mean, we're
doesn't
gonna
put
just
it
have a
in the
never
budget.
ending cycle of
Well,
people
we
coming
have
into
a never-
homelessness.
We have a never-ending pipeline right now, but
And they're all new. And one of the challenges, I think, in solving the homelessness challenge is that we have new people becoming homeless
Yeah.
all the time because of trauma, because of domestic violence, because of
No,
mental
because
health.
their
for so many
landlord
reasons.
I was telling me the other day, they have a friend who lives down here on Elm Street, not very glamorous house. But his landlord didn't it'd been there for 13 years. Landlord didn't renew his lease because he's upping the rent $1,300 a month. I know, he works at the little general store. And you drive by, my husband said, there are some really nice cars parked at the Econo Lodge, not junkers.
Mhm.
Those are people who cannot find housing because the rents have gone up
Mhm.
and do that. Those folks, if we provide housing for, are gonna be just fine. Then you've got the guys that the police department is there every couple of days to
Mhm.
deal with. They are not gonna be just fine, no matter where we put them in housing. They
Yeah.
need a whole batch of social
Mhm.
services. And so,
And to that end, just as a tag to both of these concerns, we're going to finish our supportive housing hearing. Do you remember we were had scheduled it for 2 hours? We're going to schedule the other half of it when we go down to 1 hour a day, which is coming up fairly soon. Keisha, do you want to respond to Randy's question? Because it's a big question.
It is, and I'm glad Senator Brock said something. That was part of the intention of the joint hearing, even though I wouldn't say we wrestled with the shared jurisdiction overall enough this year. Like we may have with natural resources. Emergency housing is the jurisdiction of health and welfare. And I think that's been a challenge because our goal has been to create more permanent, sustainable and long-term housing. I think we've done we've done quite a bit there. I think we all wish we could do more and we can come back next year and do that. But when it's not just, I think, the motel program, but when we say supportive housing, recovery housing, sheltering victims of domestic violence and victims of crime, figuring out how to help people with disabilities, veterans. There's a lot of special types of housing that are needed to meet people's needs that have much more support and wraparound service involved. And that's where our committees kind of have not, I think, been able to figure out how to share that jurisdiction more fully. Perhaps it's a point of discussion for this, I think there's both committees are having dinner or something soon, but I would say that if it was, my overall feeling is that the policy failure is that there aren't better options for people than motels that cost $170 a night right now, that we have not we have not made further gains on shelters and supportive housing prior to this. And that we don't have better data. I think when we talk to a lot of people, they're wishing we had better data to know, who are these folks? How did they get in this situation? How long have they been in Vermont? How many, how many other options, have failed them before they've ended up here?
Who's collecting data?
Hmm?
Who's responsible for collecting the data and the information that you need to make decisions?
Well,
Who's responsible for decision making? Who's responsible in the administration for managing this program?
That's a great question.
And I mean,
I think
those
it's
seem
a
to be just
combination.
such fundamental questions.
right,
Yeah.
it's a combination. There are many departments, I think, that have
Is this a-
aspects of
Is this
responsibility.
a function that there should be, probably call it a blue ribbon commission on how homelessness that the legislature
task
puts in
force.
legislation right now and puts to work? Instead of waiting till January to sit and debate the same issues with nobody in charge.
And people are already freezing.
This is a house on fire and nobody's in charge of the fire department.
I wonder, I'd rather us get very strategic. I think both might be good. I'm not saying this is instead, but we have a responsibility to the people who are in the shelters now, to try and understand each of their situations and figure out what the right plan is. I think what alarmed me the most in the recent article was that it sounds like one of the first lines of inquiry is like, do you have someone else to stay with? I personally did not think that's where we were at, that we're just asking people to double up with friends or family. But, clearly it's a desperate situation. And I'd love to see us have really good data about every single person that we're trying to move out of the motels into a better situation. And if it's not a better situation, if half of these people are just told, find a family member or a friend and you're on your own, that's, that is a problem.
But I think
My
to go
friend
to,
Becky, who is homeless, has been collecting that data.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. I read that
getting
article.
the
Yeah.
email. She is interviewing people.
Rebecca
To
Dupre.
pray.
Oh, yeah.
So just to answer, I think
She's
Randy's
on her
question
phone.
is, I think it's the
good.
Department of, the Office of Economic Opportunity that I think has overall responsibility for the homeless program, along with
You need
DHCD.
Social workers and
Yeah, so I think it's a bunch of, I think it's a number of divisions, particularly in the agency of
I think,
both human services and ACCD. I think it's
I think we need to look at this because until we get a whole lot more housing than we've got in the affordable area, this problem is not going away.
It's not. Well, that also goes back to the issue of what you're looking at in mobile homes. Because again, as you look at how do you get a bunch of housing quickly, that's how you get a bunch of housing quickly.
You roll it in.
well, which is what we find.
So
in
now we're gonna do a study to figure that out again, and how many months?
We
is that
don't need
gonna
a study
take?
for that because we
Nobody
know the
wants
answer to that when we have Irene or when we have,
Yeah, but
Katrina.
where do you put the parks? And you've got to get septic and you've got to get, septic is the big one. Water and septic, why do
Water
you
and-
think
or water
they're
and sewer.
all in the floodplain?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
nobody wants them in downtown.
Mhm.
How do you cite them? How do you do it? The press asked me, well, why were we paying $170 a night?
Mhm.
And I said, well, the legislature says, here's the money, put it into, but we didn't negotiate the contract. That goes to the administration. I said, but we were in crisis mode and everybody's working remote. But
so
we shouldn't be negotiating. Who's going into the Brown Derby? I'd have the health department that place wasn't habitable.
Mhm.
Legislators won't
That's a
stay there.
Not anymore.
Well, they would stay there before.
Mhm.
They used to have the John Murphy annual barbecue in the
you
parking
know, when
lot.
Obi moved out, you knew it was in deep trouble.
It's been in big trouble for a long time.
Yeah.
That's gonna be sitting there. They want a couple million or something for the lot next door. That's gonna be sitting there for a while until they find a buyer, and that owner owns, I think, 5 of these motels. So the motels are gonna be sitting there.
We need them online as housing. I mean, it would be great.
They're really, I mean,
Right.
when you do
Some of
not
them
have
are
a means to cook,
Saving.
Yeah.
when they don't give you the microwave and the mini fridge that they would give me if I paid $99 a week or day to stay there,
Right.
they don't provide even that basic service.
So I think to go to your question, I think I think we should establish the various key departments in the administration that are responsible. I mean, it's a combination. So I think at this point in the legislative session, I mean, I think that we should do that in the next day or two.
We could also
Yeah.
have a special hearing either during the veto session or, you know, I forget how we do it informally out of session with health and welfare. I mean, you know, I don't want to, I think we should
think
try to
that's a
get them
great-
now, but yeah, we should.
I think that's a great idea, and we're beginning that work by listening to the supportive housing
Yeah.
needs. And I think to build on that, it would be great if we met and did that, and we could do that, as you say, during the veto session, but we could also do that this fall.
You should probably have whoever's on approach that does the housing budgets and the budgets. Everybody on there gets a section of the budget
Right.
there. Because we can say all we want, but the money is gonna come through there.
So at this point in the game, there are enough study. I don't think our study that we have on the mobile home parks is very specific to mobile home park infrastructure, and I'm not sure it would be fair. It would be hijacked if we added homelessness
You
to
could
that.
say
issue is not
about
right
where
people.
could you
Yeah,
put other? How do we get other mobile home parks?
well, that's part of
And
what it's
one of the
discussing.
biggest problems with mobile home parks is they don't appreciate in value. The only way you have any chance is if you own the land underneath. But a mobile home in a park depreciates, which,
Which is one of the issues they're taking up, because and
yeah,
it's part of why often, particularly with private owners, the investment in the infrastructure is not maintained and continued. So
no.
it's a huge problem. I think, given our time, I think let's investigate who would actually, you know, what the right crowd is. I think, Keisha, your idea of our continuing our work on addressing this ASAP would be great. And maybe you could chat with Ginny about that. That would be terrific. And we're going to finish our supportive housing, because that's the key piece of it. And I think for the moment,
Yeah,
we're
I'm gonna
going
have some
to,
conversation with the administration.
yeah, would you
Yeah.
be good, please? If you do that, that would be great.
I think that would be helpful, but I see everybody's in charge and nobody's in charge, and this is.
Well, that may be
circles.
My friend has no social worker. She's got 2 high-risk kids. There is nobody working with her. And I am tired of trying to convince her not to depend on the housing voucher, because it travels with her, but after 3 years, no one will rent.
Mhm.
And get your name on the list.
Yeah.
You know, you need somebody that says, look, I know you got a voucher,
Right.
but get your name on the list.
But, you know,
To
one of
afford
the
the
things
housing.
that I do worry about in all of this is that issue, if you have it, they will come. Because you don't want to be a magnet for homelessness, just like we're a
Yeah.
magnet in some cases for some other kinds of welfare benefits of people that Vermont, this is a place to come if you don't have a place to live. That's a problem too. And so there's a balance.
Yeah.
There's a balance.
Yeah.
There is a balance.
So you do administration, Ginny and Keisha will chat. We'll continue our supportive housing work. And I think we're going to adjourn, given we're in good shape, and we will meet again tomorrow morning so what are we? Tomorrow morning we are, so let's adjourn.